the seer of possibilities. Sometimes, otherworldly beings find interesting ways to try and contact you. They might use a Ouija board, or maybe come to you in a dream, or sometimes they speak through another person. They each have their own style and preference that's particular to them. The one who contacted Jack spoke to him through his computer, or I guess you could say the communication was through on-screen text. The first time it happened, Jack had been sitting at his computer playing solitaire. A blinking red light from the router indicated that his internet connection was down again. This was at least a weekly occurrence, and Jack was getting used to this spotty internet service. As he moved his cards, the game faded into a solid black screen, and the red text appeared. "Hi Jack, I need a favor from you. You're a very special person, and I know you'll help me. I can't ask this of just anyone. I really need your help." Jack paused for a second. The router light was still blinking red. Is this some sort of joke? He couldn't help but wondering. Several moments later, the message continued. "Yes, Jack, I know this is weird for you, but I don't want you to worry. This is just a small, easy favor I need. I'll make sure you're rewarded." Now nearly in a panic, Jack reached around and pulled the internet cable completely from the wall. "Still here, Jack. I don't want to waste any more of your time, so I'll get right to what I need. Tomorrow when you go to work, I need you to move the large potted plant that's next to the elevator on the ground floor. All you have to do is pull it out 3 inches from the wall. If you do it at 8:17 am, nobody else will be in the area." Jack sat there, refusing to respond, still trying to figure out what was happening. The writing continued. "Look, Jack, I'm asking you because I know you'll do it. You won't let me down. You're special. We'll talk tomorrow." Jack pulled the power cord from the wall, and the computer went blank. Did that really just happen? He thought. Still shaking from the experience, he took a warm shower and got ready for bed, convincing himself that he'd either had some crazy dream, or that was just some elaborate joke. But who would play that kind of joke on him? He didn't really have friends or enemies. He woke up the next morning feeling refreshed. Work would start at 8:30 am, and Jack was never late. He pulled into the parking lot at 8:10 am. Normally he'd just go right in, but the message had told him to move the plant at 8:17 am. Was he really going to do it? Overnight, Jack's fear had turned into curiosity. Let's say he moved the plant. He wouldn't be doing anything wrong or illegal, right? In Jack's mind, the most reasonable course of action was to move the plant. He'd do it. Nothing would happen. And he'd be able to put this whole crazy matter behind him. 1 minute before 8:17, Jack left his car and walked towards the building. He entered the foyer at the exact time he was supposed to. The message was right. Nobody else was around. Odd, Jack thought. The building was normally busy this time of morning, but this temporary lull had been accurately predicted. Fine, let's see what happens, Jack muttered to himself. He walked up to the large potted plant placed firmly between the 2 elevators in the lobby of the 10-story building. The plant looked like it was fake, a decoration people passed every day without really noticing. It was heavier than Jack realized. He put some might into his effort and pulled the plant out 3 inches to his best estimate. He stood back and looked at the plant, then looked around the lobby. People were coming in behind him now, and the lobby was starting to fill up again. Nobody seemed to notice the plant was in a slightly different location. Nothing seemed different at all. Jack skipped the next elevator and waited for something. But nothing happened. Finally, Jack entered the elevator and made it to his 7th floor cubicle, on time like always. If you ever asked Jack's coworkers to describe him, you'd hear words like polite, quiet, respectful, and competent. And while those words were all accurate, they gave little indication of the truth. The truth that Jack really didn't like most people. That's not to say he disliked them, just that he had very little interest in getting to know them or being their friend, save for one. Allie, the girl who sat 2 cubicles down from him, was the only person he wanted to know more about. With her big smile, blonde hair, and beautiful figure, Jack was very interested in learning all about her. Despite his lack of success with women in the past, he was actually doing a fair job getting to know her. Every morning as he passed her cubicle, he'd stop for a chat. The chats were 1 minute at first, then 2 minutes, then several minutes. Jack was surprised that she actually seemed to like him. On this particular morning, their daily conversation lasted only a couple of minutes. As they exchanged their morning greetings and talked about Allie's wild night out, the elevator doors opened up behind them. Out hobbled James Bentley, the boss of both Jack and Allie. James' loud complaining could be heard throughout the office. "My damn foot." "What happened, James?" came the mumbled queries. "It's that damn plant they have in the lobby. I ran right into it and twisted my ankle." "James, you can barely walk. You need to go to the hospital," came Allie's concerned reply. "Can't do it now. I have meetings all day. Too important to cancel. I'll just have to tough it out." Jack, feeling stunned, left Allie's cubicle mid-conversation and sunk down into his chair. It was his fault. He was sure of it. How could he have been so stupid and careless? Still, no use in worrying about it now. A twisted ankle would heal. Everything would be all right. Upon his return home, Jack went immediately to his computer and turned it on. As soon as the computer booted up, the screen went black and a new message popped up. "How was your day, Jack?" He sat there, staring at the screen, not knowing how to answer. The message on the screen continued. "Actually, I know how your day was, but never let it be said that I'm not polite. You're wondering what's going on. You want to know why James Bentley had to twist his ankle. Well, Jack, this chain of events isn't done playing out. I don't want to tell you too much too soon, but this will all make sense to you in short order. Just go to work tomorrow like you normally do. Don't worry about a thing, Jack. You'll be rewarded. You're special. Talk to you tomorrow." Jack sat back in his chair. What was going on? Who was sending him messages? Jack's curiosity was fully engaged, and he was almost a bit excited to see what would happen next. The next morning at work started off as any ordinary day. Jack noticed that the plant had been pushed back fully against the wall, probably by the night cleaning crew. James Bentley showed up shortly after lunch, hobbling into the office on his one good foot. "Man, this foot is killing me," Jack could overhear him say. But apparently James still had a meeting he didn't want to miss. It wasn't until around 3 o'clock that Jack saw him again. James, who always seemed to prefer Allie over others, came limping up to her cubicle. "Allie, you're not doing anything right now, are you?" No. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow, I guess." "Good. Could you please drive me to see my doctor? I probably should have gone yesterday, but I just couldn't get away. This pain is just killing me right now, and I don't think I can drive myself. I barely made it here this morning, and I don't think I can even push the gas pedal right now. We can take my car if you want." "Yeah, that's fine, James. I don't have a problem taking you." Turning to Jack, she said her goodbye. "See you tomorrow, Jackie." She put on her coat and slowly followed James as he struggled down the hallway. She gave a half turn and a shrug in Jack's direction, with a little smile as she walked away. Jack felt even lonelier than normal when she was gone. It was 10 minutes later that they all heard the crash. It was preceded by the loud horn of an 18-wheeler and screeching brakes. The collision itself was a sickening thud of two large metal objects colliding. Even on the 7th floor, it was loud. The office workers gasped and ran to the windows. "Is that James' car?" one of them asked. "Hard to tell from up here," someone responded. "It's so banged up." The horrifying implication of what just happened came to Jack immediately. No, he though. This can't be true. Shaking all the way, he ran to the elevator and went to the ground floor along with several others from the office. Some of them were crying. As they joined the growing crowd around the scene of the accident, Jack could hear the far-off sound of emergency sirens. Looking past the gawkers, he could see that the 18-wheeler had hit James' car broadside. Its driver had been thrown out onto the pavement where he lay motionless. James was sitting in the passenger seat of his car, motionless, but with a surprised look on his bloody face. Jack couldn't tell if he was alive or dead. The driver's side, where Allie was seated, had taken the hit. The space she'd been occupying had been compacted to a third of its original size. Allie's head was smashed open, and her twisted body was broken and battered. The crowd was stunned. Tears, screams, sirens. That was all Jack could hear. Without going back inside the building, Jack ran to his car and drove home, angry and sad. He made the journey home and to his computer. There the machine sat. He wanted to turn it on, but was afraid of what he'd find out. Was he really the one responsible for Allie's death? The whole chain of events had started with him. He knew he was to blame. Jack reached for the power button and then pulled his hand back. Finally, after several minutes, he found the mental strength to turn it on. The screen flickered and then went black, and the familiar text started appearing on the screen. "No, Jack, it's not your fault. I know you're blaming yourself. But all people die eventually, some just sooner than others." Jack stared at the screen. He resisted the urge to throw the monitor to the ground. After a moment, the writing continued. "Jack, I'm going to tell you something, and I really need you to seriously consider everything I'm about to say. You thought you were in love with Allie. The truth is, you just wanted to fuck her. And please excuse my language, but every once in a great while it's best to be blunt. Jack, she wasn't the one for you. She would have made your life miserable. Yes, you would have eventually found the courage to ask her out. She actually was interested in you. She thought you'd make a good project. Sad really, for her, not for you. I want you to think back to all the things she told you. Why did her last boyfriend break up with her? Because she cheated on him," Jack mumbled under his breath. "Because she cheated on him, Jack. The same thing she would have done to you. She would have made you happy for about 2 months, and then miserable for the next 4 years. Sneaking around, laughing at you behind your back, spending all your money. Once you finally got rid of her, you would have been so jaded that you'd never date again. This is true, Jack. I see all future possibilities, the ones that come to pass and the ones that don't. You've seen how she really is, Jack, but you let your lust for her blind you to the truth. Together, you and I have made sure you avoided that path. One more thing, Jack. This isn't done playing out yet. There's more to come." "No, fuck you. You killed her," Jack screamed and threw the monitor from the desk. It landed on the floor and sparked out. Jack got barely any sleep that night, and the next day he wasn't sure he wanted to go to work. But the last words he'd been told had piqued his curiosity, and his anger had somewhat subsided. No work was done that day at the office. The company brought in grief counselors. People shared their thoughts. They cried. They hugged. James had actually survived the accident, but was in a coma. The doctors thought he might recover eventually, but nobody was really sure. Late in the afternoon, Jack was approached by Diego Salbarra, the head of the division. Diego was blunt and upfront, and he offered James' position to Jack. Technically, it would be a temporary promotion, but James wouldn't be back anytime soon. Diego promised him that the promotion would be made permanent once enough time had passed. "Let's keep this low-key for now," Diego told him. "I know it might seem quick, but the Lancaster project James was working on can't be stopped. It's too important to the company. I need someone in charge right away. This can't wait." Stunned, Jack accepted the promotion. He left work with a strange mixture of feelings, not really sure how he felt about anything. On his way home, he stopped at the electronics store and bought a new monitor. He made it home and powered up the computer. Once again, the writing came on the screen. "Jack, I want to be the first one to congratulate you. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." Jack stared at the screen. "Jack, I have to ask your forgiveness because haven't introduced myself yet. I'm called the Seer. Like I told you before, I see what will be, and I see what can be. It's a very powerful gift I have. But you know what, Jack? For all my power, I still can't do anything corporeal. I can predict, I can see, and with enough effort, I can even communicate. But I don't have a body. That's something that was taken from me a long, long time ago. That's why I need you, Jack. I'm an artist of sorts, an artist of human manipulation. You'll be my paintbrush and my canvas. I want you to work with me, Jack. It's all very simple. Just perform simple tasks for me from time to time." Jack was becoming more and more curious. "And Jack, before you give me an answer, I want you to know a couple of things. First off, I'll never lie to you. Secondly, I'll never ask you to do anything which, taken by itself, is wrong or illegal. Yes, bad things will result, and sometimes people will die. But they're going to die eventually anyways, right, Jack? And the bad will always be balanced out by something good happening to you." Jack winced at this last idea, but he fought the urge to turn the computer off. The Seer was right. Everyone would die eventually. Why not let something good come of it? And what about never lying to him? If he'd known at the time that Allie was going to die, he'd have never gone through with the original favor. But as he thought more about it, he realized the Seer hadn't lied to him, but had only withheld information. Still, Jack wondered if he could trust the Seer. "Work with me, Jack. Together we'll make incredible things happen. I'm just asking you to perform little tasks from time to time." "Oh, but these little tasks will have great consequences. They're going to be beautiful, Jack, and they'll always end with a reward for you. That's the beauty of my art. One single task produces something bad and something good. Oh, one last thing, Jack. I can see you're having trouble with this. If I stopped talking to you right now, it would take you about 2 weeks to decide to join me. But you know what, Jack? You would join me. That's right, you're going to say yes. So instead of waiting, why don't you just say yes to me now? Let's get started, Jack. And when all this is over, you're going to thank me. I promise you." Jack considered what the Seer had just said. His initial feeling of revolt was slowly fading. He paused, and then for the first time, he placed his fingers on the keyboard and responded directly to the Seer. "What do you want me to do next?" As years passed, Jack did every favor the Seer asked of him, and as the Seer had promised, Jack was rewarded for his actions each time. The rewards often came in unexpected and interesting ways. One of the more memorable experiences for Jack happened about 2 years after he first agreed to help the Seer. "Jack, I need you to go downtown tomorrow," the Seer requested. "Enter Garman's Liquor at exactly 12:37 p.m. A man will ask you a question. The answer you're to give him is 27. As always, the Seer's instructions were simple and direct, yet mysterious. The next day, as requested, Jack entered the store. In front of him, a burly construction worker was at the counter filling out a lottery payslip. "Let's see here," said the construction worker. "My birthday, that's the 15th. My wife's birthday, that's the 24th. And my kids' ages, 2, 10, and 13. The man scratched his head and looked around, zeroing in on Jack. "Hey, buddy, I need another number. You got one for me?" Jack smiled. 27. "Really? I was thinking about playing 35. But you know what? I like your face. Let's go with 27. With that, the man completed his slip and paid for his lottery ticket. "See ya, pal," he said happily, and he patted Jack on the shoulder on his way out the door. Jack tried not to put any more thought into what would happen to this man. "Just let these things play out, Jack. You'll never guess how things end up, so just let yourself be surprised," the Seer had advised him. Still, it was impossible not to wonder about these things from time to time. He knew, considering the way the Seer worked, there was no way possible that he'd actually help this man. but giving him a losing lottery number. That was too simple for the seer, and he couldn't imagine he'd actually given him a winning number. So that's how Jack was surprised when 2 weeks later, he ran into the same man again, this time at the grocery store. "Hey buddy, it's you. I remember you. Check it out, I won." Indeed, the man looked like $1 million. Wearing new clothes, a new gold watch, and a big goofy smile, the man walked right up to Jack. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again, but I'm glad you're here. I could have never won without you. Hey, let me buy these groceries for you." "No, wait, that's not good enough for you. You're my good luck charm. Always gotta treat people right. That's what my mom says." Reaching into his pocket, the man removed his checkbook and promptly wrote Jack a check for $10,000. "It's the least I can do for my good luck charm." After thanking the man, and feeling a bit confused by the whole thing, Jack raced home to his computer. After turning it on, the seer's writing appeared on the screen. "Well, Jack, how does it feel to be $10,000 richer?" "It feels good. But I can't help but wonder. We've never helped anyone before. Why are we starting now?" Jack asked that question with a tinge of guilt. He never liked to admit that people were being hurt by his actions. But in this case, his curiosity overwhelmed any latent feelings of guilt. "Oh, Jack, we haven't helped anyone. Yes, that man is happy now, but he'll have lost every last penny within 2 years. You saw it for yourself. He just gives money away. Old friends, lost relatives, they're all going to come asking him for money. And there will be some very bad investments as well. The stress of losing everything is going to cause his wife to leave him. She'll take the kids too. He'll be alone and broke. A ruined man who would have been much better off if he'd never won. You needn't feel bad, Jack. It's the man's own stupidity and greed that will do this to him." Jack felt some regret, but the seer's rationalizing and focusing on his own reward always put him at peace in the end. Through the years, no two tasks were ever alike. Sometimes the effects of his actions were direct and easy to see. Other times they caused a chain reaction so complex that he simply could not follow it. "Go to the county administrator's building. Park in space number 43 at 4:47 p.m. came one such request. Jack did so, and 2 months later he met Donna, with whom he fell in love and ended up marrying. He wouldn't have even known the two events were even related if he hadn't asked the seer about it. "Jack, when you parked in that space, you caused the person who would have parked there to park in a different spot. But she bumped the car next to her. She barely made a scratch, but she called her insurance agent anyway, causing him to leave the office late. He missed his train home, and while waiting for the late train, he was mugged and stabbed. He'll never fully recover. The muggers took his credit cards and used them. And Jack, I could keep going with this, but there's another 23 people involved. Sometimes these favors are going to be very complicated. But let's just say your action ultimately caused Donna to be in the exact right place for you to meet her." Jack's relationship with the seer grew. Though remaining mostly mysterious, the seer divulged enough information over time so that Jack could get a generalized understanding of the seer's history. From historical references, Jack knew the seer was thousands of years old. When still alive, the seer had been a powerful fortune teller and artist who foretold future happenings through paintings. A foolish king who misinterpreted the seer's prediction and lost a battle as a result had the seer executed. Unencumbered by physical senses and existing in a lonesome void, the seer's abilities expanded exponentially. Finally learning to communicate with the living, the seer began reaching out to those who would respond, including Jack. And of course, the seer knew everything about Jack. In all, it was as much of a friendship as one can have with a dead person. And Jack was grateful to the seer too. He had a nice job, a nice house, a beautiful wife, and people respected him. He was happy, which is something he never really felt before the seer contacted him. 12 years in total passed, 12 good years for Jack. Task after task was completed, usually about one every month. Jack, sitting in the office of his large rural house, was contacted by the seer once again. "Hi, Jack. I have a favor to ask of you. This one's the easiest yet. You don't even have to get up. Call Ryago's Pizza in exactly 2 minutes. Let the phone ring 3 times. Then you can hang up." Jack smiled, nice and easy. He no longer wondered about how these tasks would play out. He trusted the seer and simply did as he was told. Jack made the call exactly 2 minutes later. The quietness of the household was broken 30 minutes later by the ringing doorbell. That's odd, Jack thought. Neither he nor Donna were expecting anyone. Jack looked out the peephole and saw a pizza deliver boy. The logo on his cap said Ryago's Pizza. Jack opened the door. "Here's your pizza," said the boy as he thrust it into Jack's hand. "But I didn't order this," Jack argued. "Look, I don't give a damn if you ordered it or not. Mr. Ryago told me to take it here, so that's what I'm doing," the delivery boy argued, as he looked increasingly annoyed and spat in the bushes. Jack looked at the boy in front of him. He looked to be about 17 years old, but the most noticeable thing about him was his size. He was huge, probably about 6.5 feet tall, and very muscular. "It's already paid for by credit card. Just take it, because I'm not driving it back." The boy put out his hand for a tip. I don't have any cash on me." Jack told the truth. "Whatever," came the disgusted reply. The boy looked past Jack into the house, then turned and walked slowly to his waiting car, looking over his shoulder as he walked. Jack closed the door and took the pizza to the living room, where Donna was watching TV. After explaining what had happened, he excused himself to go to his office, promising to return shortly. Donna opened the pizza and took a piece. "Come back soon, sweetie. This pizza's got all your favorite toppings on it." Donna giggled as she took a bite. Arriving at his computer, the seer's words appeared on the screen. Confused, "Jack, don't be. Your neighbor down the road ordered the pizza." Mr. Ryago told that boy the correct address, but a ringing phone made it difficult for him to be heard clearly. Still, give the boy credit. He got the street right at least. "So my reward is a pizza?" Jack typed, a little confused. "Yes, Jack, your reward is a pizza, and also the chance to spend a little time with your wife. Go down there, share the pizza, enjoy it. When you're done, make love to Donna. That's not one of your tasks, that's just some advice I think you should follow. Oh, by the way, your neighbors who ordered the pizza are arguing right now over the silly fact that the pizza didn't arrive. Some of the things people argue over amaze me. They really do. Their fight is going to get very heated, but you don't need to worry about that. Go, enjoy your night." Jack followed the seer's advice, cuddled with Donna as they enjoyed their meal, then made love to her on their big, comfortable living room couch. Donna fell asleep on the couch shortly after 11 p.m. Jack lay there awake. This latest favor, it just felt odd. Carefully extracting his arm from under Donna, Jack left the living room and headed upstairs. Sitting down at the computer, Jack typed, "Are you there?" "Yes, Jack. I'm actually always here. I've been waiting for you to come back." "That pizza delivery boy. He's quite a specimen, isn't he?" Jack looked quizzically at the screen. The seer continued, "He's a horrible employee. He was hired only 3 days ago, and already Mr. Ryago wants to fire him. But as a physical specimen, he's strong, fast, and very observant. For example, he noticed that you didn't lock the front door after he delivered your pizza." "What?" Jack said aloud as he started to get up. "Sit down, Jack. I need to tell you something important, and locking the door now won't change your situation." Jack slowly took his seat again at the computer, looking behind himself as he did so. "You see, Jack, it's true that I never lied to you. Everything I've ever told you is 100% honest. But yes, I've withheld certain facts. You see, I told you that every task causes something bad to happen to someone else, and something good to happen to you. But there's a third thing. There's an ultimate goal that each task was working toward. Remember Allie? Of course you do. What you probably don't remember about her is that she was helping to pay her brother's way through college. When she died, he had to drop out. He was going to be a great psychologist, but now he works in a factory instead. That's really too bad for our pizza delivery boy. He could have used a good therapist a few years ago. But that good therapist wasn't there for him. Instead, he got some Freudian quack. And remember our lottery winner? Yes, you do. He was a neighbor to our pizza boy, after he lost all his money, of course. He beat the boy senseless after the boy jumped into the street in front of his car. Quite a traumatic memory for our young lad. And his mother didn't care about that incident, didn't protect the boy at all. She couldn't. Not after using all the drugs given to her by her boyfriend, who happened to be one of the muggers who robbed that insurance agent. He bought the drugs with the money he made from the robbery. Do you see now the scope of my artistry? Jack sat, glaring at the monitor. He wanted to get up, to check on Donna, but he was too scared to move. The seer continued, Jack, you've done over 100 tasks for me, and each one has served an ultimate purpose, to psychologically destroy this boy, turn him into a monster, and to bring him here tonight. Don't you see, Jack? This involved tens of thousands of people, and billions of possibilities. If you had failed to complete even one of the tasks, the whole chain would have collapsed. This was orchestrated by me, and set in motion by you. Together we've done something wonderful. This is a masterpiece of human manipulation. Our masterpiece, and it all begins and ends with you, 2 perfect points in time. Tonight, wrong address, no tip. This poor boy finally snapped. He's downstairs right now. He's slitting Donna's throat. At this exact moment, Jack could hear a short, muffled scream coming from the living room, followed by a gurgling noise. No! Jack screamed and stood up, starting to run downstairs. Jack, stop! The voice startled Jack. It was inside his head. For the first time, the seer was talking to him directly. It was a pleasant voice, a feminine voice. You can't do anything. She's already gone. He'll be coming for you shortly, and you can't stop him. But why? Jack cried with tears welling up in his eyes. It's not an artistic masterpiece if it doesn't begin and end with you, Jack. Her voice was soothing. I want you to appreciate the fact that I'm talking to you directly. This requires all of my energy, and as a result, I'll have to rest for several years before I can contact anyone again. That's how special you are to me. Please don't feel bad about this, Jack. I want you to take a moment and enjoy our accomplishment as much as I do. The voice paused briefly and then continued. Do you know what, Jack? If I'd never contacted you, you would have lived for 85 years. 85 boring, meaningless, and bitter years. And when you died, nobody would have been at your funeral. I gave you 12 great, meaningful years. You were happy, and together we did something beautiful, something unique. Jack paused a minute and considered his 12 years of happiness, and his tears of sorrow mixed with tears of joy. He turned and looked at the computer, while behind him, the massive hulk of the demented delivery boy appeared in the doorway, a bloody knife in his left hand. On the screen, the last words from the seer appeared. Don't you have something to say to me, Jack? Jack wiped his tears and absorbed everything the seer had just told him. As the Hulk started stepping closer to him, Jack mouthed his final words. Thank you. Don't let them in. Addiction took our mother slowly, rocked her through it, and sung her to sleep sunk deep into the mattress on her bed. When her back teeth fell out, she left them on the side of the bathtub. I was 7, and I kept them in a matchbox, the missing pieces of her kept safe, so that she wouldn't be lost forever. So maybe one day we could put her back together. Our house fell around us, and we tried our best to raise ourselves. The ceilings had water damage, the bottom stairs had dry rot, and in the winters the radiators bled rust. But it was still our house, and Annie made it a home. My sister Annie mothered me, with lopsided band-aids on bruised knees and lukewarm microwave meals. She told me ghost stories and didn't mind when I crawled into her bed later on, too scared to sleep alone. She taught me to dance, barefoot on the living room carpet, music channel on full volume on the TV, shaking our pre-adolescent hips. She always let me shower first so that I could enjoy the hot water, and never complained when she had to make do with the cold. She brushed my hair every day before school, even when I screamed and hit her when she caught the tangles. Annie was dark-haired like her father, whoever he had been, but I was blonde. Annie was desperate to be blonde too, like Marilyn Monroe, like Mom. I think she thought it would make them closer, remind Mom less of her dad. I'd give anything for her to have her hands in my hair one more time, even if it hurt. She moved to New York when I turned 18 and never came back. I still dream about her sometimes. Keeping up with our mother was impossible, and we learned from a young age that we would always be left behind. It didn't make it any easier. When she was drinking light, she was radiant and would wake us up at 3 a.m. with pancakes dripping in cherry syrup. Sometimes when the weather was right, and she'd had enough being drunk alone, she would call our school up and tell them we had both come down with summer sickness, and we'd drive to the beach instead. I remember being 9 years old in the backseat of the car, coming home after one of our ocean days, sucking the salt from my fingers. Annie had just dyed her hair blonde, her best friend Jane helping her bend over our kitchen sink. From behind, I couldn't tell who was the mother and who was the daughter, radio up and windows down, blowing the sky inside. When she was drinking heavily, she'd be out all night, hair piled up like a beauty queen, eyes glazed over and ringed with glitter and black. Sometimes she'd be gone a day or two. She would never give us advance notice. One day we'd just wake up to an empty house, with the fridge packed full and a post-it note on its door, complete with a smear of Mom's lipstick in the outline of a kiss, telling us she'd be back soon. Sometimes she'd bring guys home, filling the table with beer cans and ashtrays, smoke up to the ceiling, Mom lost in the haze. We'd sleep with pillows over our heads, trying to drown out the music they would blast all night, and wake up to strangers at our kitchen table in the morning, asking us where we kept the coffee. When Mom drank too little, she fell apart. She wouldn't buy food, and the refrigerator went bare. She'd chain smoke, leaving cigarette burns on the wallpaper up by the stairs like the walls were sick and decaying. She barely slept, walking around with blue half-moons under her eyes, knuckles raw. She would scream at the slightest thing. I remember once when I spilled a glass of juice on the couch. She looked over at me with dead eyes and dragged me off onto the carpet, and then took every single cushion off the couch and into the backyard and set them on fire. Annie went to watch a while from the window, and then sat next to me on the floor, backs pressed against the skeleton of the seats, head resting in the crater of my collarbones. It was the worst when Mom drank too much. She'd laugh too loudly and too long, at anything and everything, until her mouth started to shake, and she began to cry into her cereal at the breakfast table. Annie shut down when Mom was like this, going somewhere deep inside herself where no one could hurt her. She'd stay up until the morning watching old black and white movies on TV, whispering the lines she knew by heart like prayers. When I was 5 years old, I'd cry when I'd find Mom passed out on her bed, sure she would never wake up. Annie would wipe my tears and tell me she was only sleeping, like the princesses in my storybook. We'd sit on Mom's bed together and wait for her to wake up. When we were older, I was the one who would pick Mom up off the bathroom floor again and again, and Annie would put her to bed, smoothing her hair off her face, wiping the vomit from her mouth, and changing her clothes if she'd pissed herself. Watching them then, there was no doubt that Annie was the mother now. It was October, and I was 13, Annie 16. It was a Wednesday night and Mom had been gone for 2 days. She'd called us that morning from a payphone, voice slurring, telling us she was having the best time with all her new friends and that she hoped we were doing fine. When she asked me if I was having a good birthday, I hung up on her. My birthday had been the day before. Annie had given me a pile of presents, strawberry lip gloss and glittery nail polishes. I didn't ask where she'd gotten the money for them. I didn't care. We'd taken the bus to the beach with Jane and ate the birthday cake she had made for me, sand getting into the frosting. It tasted like sweetness and the sea, and I savored every bite and scrape of sugar against my teeth. We watched the sun go down, Annie snapping grainy photos on her Nokia as I blew out my candles, wishing over and over that Mom wouldn't come home, that she'd stay gone this time. But that Wednesday night, Annie and I weren't speaking. Anger hung heavy between us, seeping through the floorboards. It began when she tripped at the bottom of the stairs. We'd both laughed, Annie throwing her head back, the gap between her front teeth catching the light. When I'd bent to pick her up, I felt her breath, warm against the freckles on my cheeks. I let go of her arms, and she fell again, hitting the floor and grinning, shaking her hair from her face. Her breath was heavy with whiskey. I couldn't start picking her up too, couldn't watch her fall again and again. Just like Mom, I knew she'd never get back up. I'd stared down at her, blonde hair hanging over her eyes, and all I could see was our mother. Then I was running, feet slamming the hallway like heartbeats turned loose. I'd run for the kitchen and tipped every bottle we had down the sink, shoving Annie back as she fought to stop me, catching liquor on her fingers as it fell. She grabbed my shoulders and made me drop the very last bottle. It smashed between us on the floor, glass shards shining like we'd dragged the stars out of the sky and broken them, like pieces we could never put back. Outside through the open windows, the sky turned pale gold, the clouds a mess of pink and cream smeared across the horizon. I cried then, watching my sister on her knees picking up the pieces. That was Annie, always trying to fix things, even when it was too late. The smell of food dragged me from my room, my stomach turning traitor inside my ribcage. Annie was cooking pasta, real food not made in a microwave. She'd set the table, Tammy Wynette singing softly from the CD player, Annie gently swaying her hips as she stirred the tomato sauce, rich and warm. As we ate in silence, I forgave her more with every bite. Mom never cooked dinner, never remembered my favorite had been spaghetti since I was a kid, and never stayed sober long enough to sit up at a table. Annie wasn't Mom. We were washing the dishes when we first heard it. A moth was crawling down the inside of the pane, and I cracked the window to let it out into the dark. From the backyard came a faint sound. I tilted my head to listen as it was coming from far off, crying. I figured it was Mika, the 2-year-old next door, having a tantrum loud enough for us to catch, or maybe even Lucky Strike, the cat that belonged to the junkies down the street, begging for food like he sometimes did. I always wanted to feed him when he came around, winding over my ankles. But Annie always stopped me, saying once you started giving they never stopped taking. Looking back, I don't think she was talking about the cat. Annie flipped the Christmas lights strung up around the porch, and we sat on the plastic beach chairs watching the skies. When we were little, we'd sit outside, and Annie would tell me the names of all the constellations and the stories of how they came to be hung up in the night sky. I had to grow up before I realized she made them all up as she went along. It was a game we still like to play now, making up ridiculous stories for the shapes we could pick out. Ah, yes, that one there is the Coors Light. It got there when God dropped it out of his convertible window and never picked it up, she said, nodding sagely and hiding her smile. Of course, I said, waving my hands and pointing up past the power lines. Right next to the ashtray, left there by angels on a smoke break. Yeah, they say if you wish on it, all your dreams will come true, said Annie with a grin. Then she stopped laughing, and her voice grew quiet, face tilted up to all those dead stars. Let's wish, Emmy. Let's wish. So we did. The sound of wailing interrupted us. It was closer this time, and definitely human. We turned to one another in confusion. Annie shrugged, and I squinted into the black. It sounded like a baby, lost, tired and alone. It must be Mika, I said, slowly getting to my feet. Maybe he walked around the back. Do you want to call Connie and tell her we'll bring him over? Annie didn't reply. I sighed and rolled my eyes. Okay, I guess I'll do everything then. I stepped off the porch, grass soft against my heels. The air smelled like it might rain, fresh and clean and growing. A promise unfulfilled. Annie's voice was strained. I turned to her with a smile. It died on my face when I saw the look on her own. Get inside now. She was staring out into the dark, past me, and opening the door with one hand behind her, fingers fumbling on the latch. I froze, barefoot in the dirt. I'd glimpsed what she was looking at. In the bushes by the back fence, someone was crouching with their knees tucked up neatly under his chin, and his arms wrapped around his legs. His mouth was agape, softly opening and closing as he cried. Like a child, lost in the dark. No, not like a child. More like someone pretending, mimicking the sound under cover of darkness. Suddenly they straightened their back, snapping upright, face still obscured by shadow. They were tall and slim, extraordinarily thin by human standards. Panic made me move, carried forward by animal instincts left over from a time when people still lived in nature. I was faster than Annie, dragging her inside and slamming the door behind us, hearing it bounce on its hinges as I locked it. We watched as the person slowly approached the house with long, deliberate strides. Annie reached for my hand, holding me tight, and turned me to face her, holding my shoulders. Don't turn around, Emmy, don't turn around. Instinctively, I started to look over my shoulder into the gloom. Annie grabbed my face hard and shook her head. I knew then she was serious. Her voice cracked, and she cleared her throat, gripping my hand tight enough to hurt, nails digging in, grounding herself. I looked down at our interlocked fingers, both of us born of the same bones. I'm going to call the cops, and everything is going to be, her voice faltered, stuttering. Tears spilled over her lashes. Annie never cried. Your phone's on the porch, she whispered, and bile crawled its way up my throat. Her phone was upstairs, charging. A soft tapping filled the silence. Annie turned wide-eyed to the window. It was the sound of someone's forehead slowly and repeatedly bumping against the glass. Then the blows accelerated, gaining in both speed and strength, skin meeting glass until they were slamming into the window hard enough to shake the panes. A moment later, the tapping stopped, and I was about to ask Annie if I could look now, when she screamed, followed by the sound of cracking glass and a tremendous crash. Whoever was in our yard had just smashed their face hard enough into the window to shatter it. We ran up the stairs 2 steps at a time, skipping the rotted ones out of habit. I turned to look behind me once, and Annie yanked my face back before I could see. The sound of glass breaking echoed behind us as we made it to the bathroom and locked the door. A weak, mewling cry, like that of an infant calling for its mother, filled the hallway, trapped between the walls and entryways. Annie threw her back against the door, feet jammed up against the bathtub, clutching a knife she had grabbed from the kitchen. I joined her, shoulder to shoulder, and did the same. Slow footsteps started on the stairs, calculated and casual. The crying took on a mocking quality, resembling laughter, arriving in short, shrill bursts of sound followed by high-pitched giggling, and then silence, only to start again a moment later. The first door on the upstairs floor was my bedroom, and we heard the distinct sound of it slamming open. They were looking for us. What the fuck is going on? I asked Annie, not even bothering to brush away the tears that I couldn't keep from falling. I watched my sister pick herself up off the floor and brace her hands on the door as we heard the sound of a second door slamming open. Mom's room. The next room on the hallway was the bathroom. Annie pulled me to my feet and handed me the knife. I shook my head and pushed it back to her, terrified of what would happen if I had to use it. Annie shoved me and pressed the knife into my hands, thumb pressing hard enough along the edge to draw blood. I watched a winding road of crimson rivulets cascading down her wrist. In spite of the pain, Annie continued pushing the blade into my hands. Finally, I took it from her. Something slammed against the wall that Mom's room shared with the bathroom. A high-pitched howl followed. I held my breath and felt my heart beating frantically in the base of my throat. "I'm going to get the phone from my room," my sister said. I shook my head dramatically in protest. Before I could say a word, Annie clamped a hand over my mouth. I could taste the blood on her hand, salty and sweet, like birthday cake by the ocean. "Yes, I'm going to get the phone, and I'm going to call the cops. We're going to be okay." I shook my head again. "It's the only way," Annie insisted. "When I go, I need you to lock the door, and I don't want you to open it for anything or anyone. Not for me, not for anyone. Promise me." I shook my head, and Annie pressed her hand against my mouth, pushing my teeth against my lips so forcefully it made my eyes water. "Promise me, Im." Something smashed in the room next door. Annie brushed the hair from my face and gently tucked it behind my ear. "Promise," she mouthed, and unlocked the door as slowly as possible, the bolt scraping gently. I watched the curve of her shoulder disappear into the darkened hall, like the moon in eclipse. And then she was gone. I couldn't move or breathe for a second, and then I slammed the bolt shut just as something bounced off the outside of the door. A high-pitched scream ensued, followed by the handle rattling up and down hard enough to pop a screw loose. I watched it roll toward me on the tiles, and then everything went still. I sat with my back to the door, holding the knife and wishing I was holding Annie's hand instead. The silence continued. For a moment, the only sound was that of my breath slowly filling the room. A voice broke the illusion of solitude. "Em?" A familiar voice came through the door. Startled, I gripped the knife even more firmly than before. "Honey, what's going on?" "Mom," my voice cracked. "Mama, is that you?" I wrapped my arms around myself to keep from shaking. "Sweetie, it's okay. Just open the door. It's okay. Just let me in." The handle rattled again, gentler this time. "Just let me in. It's all okay." She banged impatiently on the door, and I took my handle of the bolt. "Honey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I missed your birthday. I'm sorry I'm such a terrible mother. Please," her voice broke, and she started to cry. "Just let me in, baby. I'm so sorry." I screwed my eyes shut. She sounded so sad and so lost. I just wanted her to hold me as like she did when I was a kid, when I'd come in with a scraped knee after falling off the swings. Maybe this time she meant it. Perhaps it would all be okay. My hand found its way to the bolt again. My sister's voice came through the door, warm and gentle. "Yeah, Emily, let us in. It's all okay." My hand froze on the bolt, and I tightened my grip on my weapon. Annie never called me by my full name. A hand banged on the door, handle rattling. "Emily, let us in." Annie's voice became low and guttural, followed by the same shrill giggles from before. Mom spoke now, pleading and crying, her voice growing louder and louder. "Let us in, let us in, let us in," she shouted over and over again, punctuated by her fists on the door. I thought about bedtime stories, and all the demons and monsters we pray never crawl out from under our beds. That's not my sister, and you're not my mother. I screamed through the door, hands over my head. I climbed into the bathtub, curled into the fetal position, and clutched the knife to my chest. I didn't know what it was outside that door, but I knew it wasn't Annie. It wasn't the voice that scolded me whenever I changed the TV channel, the one that sang me happy birthday, the one that told me I was smart even when I got bad grades, the one that read me stories about princesses that never wake up. It wasn't human. Bangs and yells came from downstairs, followed by the footsteps of people running. A low, guttural howl ripped through the house, filling the room until I felt like I was drowning in the sound. And then the door was kicked in. I screamed, covered my eyes, and waited to die. A moment later, arms found me, lifted me from the tub, and carried me from the room. I looked at the outside of the door as I was taken downstairs. Its exterior was covered in long, scraping claw marks, stretching to the floor. I found the hallway covered in the soft, downy remains of torn-up pillows, making it appear as if it had snowed indoors. I watched the tiny feathers drift slowly as men in uniforms checked each of the rooms that looked like they had been ripped apart by something feral. Outside, police cars and an ambulance waited in our driveway. And there, in the middle of it all, was Annie, bathed in blue and red light and glowing in the dark like a neon angel. I threw myself from the officer's shoulders and ran to her. Then I held us both together, broken pieces and all, standing under all those constellations we'd concocted. Muffled screaming came from the ambulance, which rocked occasionally. Annie gently turned my head away, smiling so sadly it made my chest ache. I understood. It turns out there was no demon. No wild animal or bad men were trying to break in. It was just Mom, out of her mind on booze, drugs, and everything in between, coming to the end of a week-long binge. Something had finally broken inside her head, and this time we couldn't put her back together, no matter how hard we tried. Sometimes you fall one last time, and then never get back up. Annie had seen her rail-thin frame in the garden, blood dribbling from her mouth, track marks bulging on her forearms like unmapped roads, desperate for one more hit, one more fix. She'd searched the kitchen for all the alcohol I'd thrown away, and when she hadn't found any, she went hunting for the stash hidden in the bathroom. She hadn't wanted me, just the drugs on the other side of the door. She'd been so high she was able to mimic Annie's voice nearly perfectly. The real monsters are the ones that eat you alive slowly, the kind that comes in a bottle or a needle, or at the end of a long list of reasons why you can't get out of bed in the morning. Sometimes the monsters are the ones that raise you or love you the most, but it's up to you to let them in. I need some bread and cereal, too. You get a phone call from your mother. Since her car has been in the shop, she asked you to go to the grocery store and pick up a few odds and ends for her. Bread, milk, cereal, and chicken breasts. After writing down a small list, you reluctantly get in the car and pick up the items at the store. The lady cashier makes an odd remark to you. You know, we're in no danger of a milk shortage. Upon arriving at her house, you knock several times. No answer. You decide to try the door. It opens. You place the grocery bag on the counter. Strange. There seems to be 6 other grocery bags, each with identical contents. In a couple, the chicken and the milk has gone bad. Mom, you call out, but no answer. You make your way through the kitchen and into the living room. Sitting on the couch, with her head cut off and neatly resting on her lap, is your mother. Naturally, you call the police who come over to investigate. They mention that she has been dead for nearly a week. Furthermore, the police psychiatrist is at the scene and talks to you after you give your initial statement. Sitting on the front steps, you overhear the psychiatrist talking with the crime scene investigator. It's not uncommon for people suffering from schizophrenia to get locked into a series of repetitive behaviors, he says. You think to yourself, they can't be talking about me. Schizophrenia. Nah. Repetitive behavior. Do they think I did this? Suddenly your cell phone goes off. Hello? Hi, hun, it's me. Could you stop at the store and pick up some chicken and milk? Oh, and I need some bread and cereal too. No problem, Mom. I'll be right over.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling content.